Charles Taylor came home that afternoon without telling anyone. He'd left for New York that morning, but something pulled him back. When he unlocked the front door, he froze. He heard sounds. In a house that had been silent as a graveyard for 8 months, sounds. Laughter, singing, music. His heart started pounding. Fear crawled up his spine, because those sounds shouldn't exist anymore. Not after his wife died, not after his 3 daughters stopped being alive. Charles stood there, barely breathing, trying to understand what he was hearing. The sounds were coming from deeper in the house. He moved slowly, following them, down the hall, through the living room, his hands shaking. The dining room door. He reached for it, terrified of what he'd find. And when he pushed it open, what he saw destroyed him. Charles Taylor was a man who could buy anything, fix anything. At 45, he'd built one of the most powerful tech companies in America. When Fortune 500 companies had security problems, they called him. His decisions moved billions. His name opened doors most people would never see. But none of that mattered anymore. Because 8 months ago, on a Tuesday morning in February, his wife Catherine collapsed during her Pilates class. Sudden cardiac arrest. She was 39 years old. By the time Charles reached the hospital, she was gone. Just like that, the woman who'd been his, everything gone. Their 7-year-old triplets lost the only mother they'd ever known, Phoebe, Hope, Rachel. And something inside them broke. They didn't cry the way you'd expect, didn't scream or throw things or ask why. They just disappeared into themselves, into a silence so deep it felt like drowning. They stopped talking, stopped eating full meals, stopped being children. Charles would find them sitting together on the window seat in their playroom, 3 small bodies pressed close, staring out at the San Francisco Bay but seeing nothing. He tried to reach them, tried to hold them, tried to say the right things. But every time he hugged them, they felt like statues, present, but not really there. His mansion, the one that used to be filled with Catherine's laughter and Beatles music and little feet running through hallways, became something else. A tomb, beautiful on the outside, dead on the inside. And Charles, a man who'd spent his life solving impossible problems, couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most. So he did what desperate fathers do. He hired help, the best money could buy. First came a psychiatrist from Yale. She had a 6-month waiting list, but Charles paid triple to get her immediately. She arrived with tablets, therapy games, clinical protocols. The girls stared at the floor. 4 weeks, $35,000. Nothing. Next came a celebrity nanny, the woman who'd raised children for tech billionaires and movie stars. She brought structure, schedules, organic meals. But when she tried to force the girls outside one afternoon, Rachel broke down, shaking, gasping for air, unable to breathe. The nanny left after 3 weeks. Then came a grief therapist, 20 years of experience, kind, patient, truly compassionate. She tried everything: art therapy, play therapy, gentle conversation. The girls wouldn't respond. After 2 months, even she had to admit defeat. Charles watched her walk out the door. Another expert, another failure. That night, he stood outside his daughter's bedroom and listened to them cry themselves to sleep. And he thought, I have everything, and I have nothing. Then something unexpected happened. A young woman named Maria Nolan showed up for an interview. She had worn shoes, a thin resume, no fancy degrees. Charles's estate manager had already decided she wasn't qualified. But Maria asked for 5 minutes. Just 5. She sat across from Charles in his office. This woman with tired eyes, but something warm, something real in her presence. Why should I hire you? Charles asked, barely looking up from his laptop. Maria took a breath. Because I lost my mama when I was 9 years old, Mr. Taylor. Charles looked up. And what saved me wasn't someone with answers or degrees. It was someone who just sat with me, in the pain, who didn't try to rush me through it. Her voice was quiet but steady. Maybe that's what your daughters need too. Something shifted in Charles's chest. When can you start? Tomorrow, sir. That first evening, Maria didn't try to make the girls talk, didn't force smiles or games. She just moved through the house quietly, and started humming, an old hymn her grandmother used to sing. Soft, warm, like something the house had been missing. Charles stood in the hallway that night and listened, and for the first time in 8 months, the silence felt different. Not peaceful yet, but like maybe something was beginning to shift. What Charles didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Maria would soon discover something hidden in his late wife's study. Something that would change everything. But before we continue, like this video, subscribe, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes God sends healing through the people we almost overlook. And if you're hurting today, I pray this story reminds you miracles still happen. Maria started the next morning. She arrived at 7, while the house was still quiet. Charles had already left for the office. The girls were still asleep upstairs. She moved through the kitchen slowly, taking it all in. The expensive espresso machine that looked like it hadn't been used in months. The marble counters spotless, cold, untouched. A bowl of fruit on the island, perfectly arranged but going bad because no one was eating it. Everything looked like a magazine photo. Nothing looked like a home. Maria opened the refrigerator. Rows of prepared meals in containers, organic, labeled, uneaten. She closed it and just stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of what lived in this house. Not people. Ghosts. Around 8, she heard small footsteps upstairs. The girls were awake. Maria didn't go to them. Not yet. She just started making breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, nothing fancy. Just food that smelled like someone cared. A few minutes later, 3 small figures appeared in the kitchen doorway. Phoebe in front, Hope and Rachel holding hands behind her. They looked so small. Too small to be carrying what they were carrying. "Good morning," Maria said gently, not making a big deal out of it. "I made breakfast if you're hungry." They didn't answer, just stared at her with those big, sad eyes. "That's okay," Maria said. "You don't have to eat if you don't want to. I'll just leave it here." She set 3 plates on the table and went back to wiping down the counter, humming softly while she worked. An old hymn, one her grandmother used to sing while cooking Sunday dinner. The girls stood there for a long moment. Then, slowly, Phoebe moved to the table, sat down, picked up a fork. Hope and Rachel followed. They ate in silence, but they ate, and Maria didn't push, didn't ask questions, just let them be. When they finished, they got up and left, without a word. But Maria noticed something. Rachel had eaten almost everything on her plate. The next few days went the same way. Maria cooked, cleaned, hummed her hymns, moved through the house like a soft presence there, but not intrusive, never asking the girls to talk, never forcing them to smile. On the 3rd day, while folding laundry in the hallway near their playroom, Maria heard one of them whisper something. She couldn't make out the words, but it was the first sound she'd heard from them besides footsteps. On the 4th day, Hope stood in the kitchen doorway while Maria was baking bread. Just stood there, watching. Maria didn't acknowledge it directly, just kept working, humming, letting the smell of fresh bread fill the house for the first time in who knows how long. "Smells good, doesn't it?" Maria said softly, not looking up. Hope didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. On the 5th day, Maria decided it was time to clean Catherine's study. Charles had mentioned it once, briefly. "That room stays closed," he'd said, his voice tight. "I can't. I'm not ready." But dust was settling, and Maria believed that love shouldn't be locked away in the dark. She opened the door slowly. The room still smelled like perfume, Catherine's perfume. Her reading glasses sat on the desk, a coffee cup, half full, long cold, books on the shelves, photos on the walls, a whole life, frozen. Maria moved carefully, reverently, treating every object like it was sacred. That's when she saw it. A leather journal, tucked in the desk drawer. She opened it with shaking hands. The first page, in beautiful handwriting, Catherine's birthday traditions. Maria's breath caught. She turned the pages slowly. Recipes, photos, notes about what each girl loved, memories written down like prayers. And then, near the back, an unfinished letter. "To my girls on your 8th birthday." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the small calendar on Catherine's desk, the one with dates circled in red marker. February 15th. Circled, starred, highlighted. Maria pulled out her phone, checked today's date. Her heart stopped. February 9th. 6 days. The girl's 8th birthday was in 6 days. And judging by the silence in this house, by the way Charles moved through life like a man underwater, he'd forgotten completely. Maria sat down on the floor, journal in her lap, and cried. Not from sadness, from knowing exactly what she had to do. Maria didn't tell Charles about the journal. Not yet. She tucked it back in the drawer and closed the study door quietly behind her. Her hands were still shaking, but her mind was clear. She had 6 days. 6 days to figure out how to honor a dead woman's wishes without breaking a grieving man's heart all over again. 6 days to help 3 little girls remember it was okay to celebrate being alive. But first, she had to reach them. That evening, when Charles came home from work, Maria was in the kitchen making dinner. Nothing fancy, just chicken, roasted vegetables, mashed potatoes, the kind of meal that feels like someone's paying attention. The girls were in the living room, sitting together on the couch, not watching TV, not reading, just sitting. Charles walked past them, briefcase in hand, suit jacket wrinkled from a long day. "Hi, girls," he said softly. They looked up, nodded, nothing more. Maria watched from the kitchen doorway as Charles's shoulders sagged. He disappeared upstairs without another word. At dinner, the 5 of them sat at the table in near silence. Charles asked the girls about their day. They gave one-word answers or just shrugged. But Maria noticed something. Rachel was watching her. Not obviously, just watching. After dinner, while Charles retreated to his office for more work calls, Maria started washing dishes. She didn't turn on the TV or fill the silence with chatter. She just hummed. The same hymn as always, soft and low. A few minutes later, footsteps behind her. Maria glanced over her shoulder. Phoebe was standing in the doorway, holding a book. "Hi, sweetheart," Maria said gently. "Need something?" Phoebe didn't answer right away. Just stood there, clutching that book like it was keeping her anchored. Finally, in a voice so small Maria almost missed it. "Why do you hum all the time?" Maria's heart squeezed. She turned off the water, dried her hands, and knelt down so she was eye level with this little girl. "My grandmother raised me," Maria said softly, "and when I was sad, really, really sad, she used to hum while she cooked or cleaned. She told me music makes the heavy things feel lighter." Phoebe looked down at her book. "Does it work?" she whispered. "Sometimes," Maria said honestly. "Not always, but it helps me remember I'm not alone." Phoebe's eyes filled with tears. Maria didn't reach for her, didn't try to hug her, just stayed close. "Do you miss your mama?" Phoebe finally asked, her voice breaking. "Every single day," Maria said. "Even now, even after all these years. Does it ever stop hurting?" Maria took a breath. "It gets different. The hurt doesn't go away completely, but it gets softer. Like it makes room for other feelings too. Happy memories, love, joy. They can all live together." Phoebe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I miss my mama so much," she whispered. "I know, baby, I know." And then, something happened that hadn't happened in 8 months. Phoebe stepped forward and wrapped her thin arms around Maria's neck. Maria held her while she cried. Just held her, didn't say it would be okay, didn't try to fix it. Just stayed. A few moments later, Maria felt 2 more small bodies press against her sides. Hope and Rachel. All 3 girls, crying in her arms. And Maria, this woman who'd been hired to clean floors and fold laundry, held them like they were the most precious things in the world. Upstairs, Charles stood at the top of the stairs, phone in his hand, frozen. He'd come down to ask Maria a question about tomorrow's schedule. But he couldn't move, couldn't speak, because for the first time in 8 months, his daughters were letting someone in. He backed away quietly, went to his room, and sat on the edge of his bed. And for the first time since Catherine's funeral, Charles Taylor let himself cry. Not from sadness, from something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The next morning, Maria found the girls waiting for her in the kitchen. Not sitting, not hiding. Waiting. Like they'd been hoping she'd come. Good morning, Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady even though her heart was racing. Good morning, Hope whispered back. It was the first greeting Maria had heard from any of them. She made pancakes that morning, not fancy ones, just simple, slightly burned on the edges, the way real people make them. While they ate, Rachel spoke. Our mama used to make pancakes on Saturdays. The room went still. Maria set down the spatula slowly. Yeah? What kind did she make? Chocolate chip, Phoebe said quietly. She'd let us put the chips in ourselves. We always put too many. That's the best way to do it, Maria said, smiling softly. Hope looked up. Do you think it's okay to talk about her? Maria pulled out a chair and sat down with them. Baby, it's more than okay. Your mama loved you so much. Talking about her keeps that love alive. Daddy doesn't talk about her, Rachel said, her voice small. He gets too sad. Maria's throat tightened. Your daddy's hurting too. Sometimes grown-ups don't know how to talk about the hard things, but that doesn't mean you can't. Phoebe looked at her sisters, then back at Maria. We used to have so much fun, she said. Before. Tell me, Maria said gently. And they did. For the first time in 8 months, the girls talked about their mother, not in past tense sadness, but in memory, in love. They told Maria about birthday parties and bedtime songs, about Saturday morning dance parties in the kitchen, about how Catherine would let them pick out their own dresses, always in their favorite colors. Maria listened to every word, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. That afternoon, while the girls were resting, Maria went back to Catherine's study. She opened the journal again, reading more carefully this time. Catherine had written detailed plans for their 8th birthday, the dresses, the cake recipe, even a letter she'd started writing but never finished. To my girls, on your 8th birthday, if I could give you one gift, it would be this: permission to be happy, even when you miss me, especially when you miss me. Because love doesn't end, my darlings, it just changes shape. And the greatest way to honor someone you've lost is to keep living, keep laughing, keep loving. I'll be cheering you on from wherever I am. The letter stopped there, unfinished. Maria wiped her eyes and made a decision. She was going to finish what Catherine started. That evening, when Charles came home, something was different. The house felt warmer somehow. He found Maria and the girls in the living room. The girls were showing Maria their drawings, actually showing her, actually talking. Daddy, Hope called when she saw him. Come, look. Charles stood in the doorway, stunned. Hope had drawn a picture, a family, 4 people, and above them, a woman with angel wings. That's Mama, Hope said. She's watching us. Charles's eyes filled with tears. He knelt down and looked at the drawing. Really, looked at it. It's beautiful, honey. Maria said it's okay to draw, Mama, Hope said. Is that okay? Charles looked up at Maria. She was standing quietly to the side, giving them space. His voice broke. Yes, baby, it's more than okay. That night, after the girls went to bed, Charles found Maria in the kitchen. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For doing what I couldn't, for helping them remember it's okay to love her. Maria met his eyes. They never stopped loving her, Mr. Taylor. They just needed permission to show it. Charles nodded, unable to speak. Mr. Taylor, Maria said carefully. Can I ask you something? Of course. When is their birthday? Charles froze. The color drained from his face. Their birthday? Yes, sir. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, checked the calendar. February 9th. His daughter's birthday was February 15th. 6 days away. Oh God, he whispered. I forgot. I completely forgot. Maria stepped closer. It's okay. It's not okay. His voice cracked. What kind of father forgets his own daughter's birthday? A father who's drowning in grief, Maria said gently. A father who's human. Charles sat down heavily at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Catherine would have had everything planned by now. The party, the cake, everything. Maria hesitated. Then slowly, she said, what if we did something? Just us. Something small. Something she would have wanted. Charles looked up, his eyes red. Do you think they'd want that? I think, Maria said softly. "They need it more than you know." Charles didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the birthdays he'd missed while building his company, all the times Catherine had covered for him, planned everything, made it perfect. And now she was gone, and he was failing their daughters all over again. The next morning, he left early, told himself it was because of meetings, but the truth was simpler. He couldn't face them. Maria noticed. She was folding laundry in the living room when she heard his car pull out of the driveway before sunrise. The girls were still asleep. She stood at the window, watching his taillights disappear, and felt something heavy settle in her chest. He was running. She understood it. Grief made people do that, made them hide from the very things that could heal them. But those girls needed their father. Later that morning, while making breakfast, Maria heard footsteps on the stairs, lighter than usual, almost hopeful. Rachel appeared first, then Phoebe and Hope right behind her. "Is Daddy still here?" Rachel asked. Maria's heart sank. "He had to leave early for work, sweetie." The light in their eyes dimmed just a little. They ate breakfast quietly, not the heavy silence from before, just disappointment. After they finished, Maria sat with them at the table. "Can I tell you girls something?" They nodded. "Your daddy loves you so much. You know that, right?" "Then why does he leave all the time?" Hope asked, her voice small. Maria chose her words carefully. "Sometimes, when people are really, really sad, they don't know how to be around the people they love most, because it hurts too much. Not because of you. Because they miss the person who's gone." "He misses Mama," Phoebe said. "So much," Maria said softly. "Just like you do." Rachel looked down at her hands. "We never talk about her when Daddy's home. It makes him too sad." "I know, baby. But we want to talk about her," Hope whispered. "We want to remember." Maria pulled them close. "Then we'll remember, together, okay?" They nodded against her. That afternoon, Maria made a decision that terrified her. She was going to use Catherine's journal, going to plan a small celebration for the girls' birthday. Not a big party, nothing overwhelming. Just a quiet moment to honor their mother's memory and let them feel loved. But she wouldn't tell Charles. Not yet. Because if she told him, he'd probably say no. He'd say it was too soon, too painful. He'd retreat further into his work and his guilt. And those girls would spend another birthday in silence. Maria knew she was taking a risk, knew she could lose her job, knew she was crossing a line. But some lines were meant to be crossed. That evening, Charles came home late again, after the girls were already in bed. Maria was in the kitchen, cleaning up. "How were they today?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Good." They talked about their mom a little. Charles's jaw tightened. "That must have been hard." "Actually," Maria said gently, "I think it helped." He didn't respond, just stood there looking exhausted and lost. "Mr. Taylor," Maria said carefully, "the birthday." "I'll handle it," he said quickly. I'll think of something." But the way he said it flat, defeated, told Maria he wouldn't. He'd bury himself in work, avoid it, let the day pass quietly because facing it was too painful. "Okay," Maria said softly. After he went upstairs, Maria pulled out Catherine's journal and opened it to the birthday page. She had 5 days. 5 days to do what Catherine couldn't. 5 days to show those girls they were still allowed to celebrate being alive. She ran her fingers over Catherine's handwriting and whispered into the empty kitchen. "I won't let them forget, Catherine, I promise." Upstairs, Charles sat on the edge of his bed, staring at a photo on his nightstand. Catherine and the girls on their 7th birthday, all 4 of them laughing, covered in cake frosting. He picked up the frame with shaking hands. "I don't know how to do this without you," he whispered. The house was quiet. No answer came. But somewhere, in the space between grief and hope, something was shifting. Maria was planning a miracle. And Charles, whether he knew it or not, was about to witness what love looks like when it refuses to give up. 3 days before the birthday, Maria woke up at 5 a.m. with her heart pounding. She'd been dreaming about Catherine, about a woman she'd never met but felt like she knew. In the dream, Catherine was standing in the kitchen, writing in her journal, humming, Blackbird. When Maria opened her eyes, the dream faded, but the feeling stayed. Do this for them. Maria got dressed and went downstairs before anyone else woke up. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with Catherine's journal open in front of her. The birthday plans were detailed, specific, full of love. But Maria wasn't Catherine. She didn't have money for an elaborate party. She couldn't recreate everything perfectly. She was just a maid with a borrowed idea and a breaking heart. What if she messed this up? What if the girls weren't ready? What if Charles came home and fired her on the spot for overstepping? She closed the journal and pressed her palms against her eyes. God, she whispered, if this is wrong, stop me, please. No lightning bolt came, no clear answer. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the weight of a choice only she could make. An hour later, Charles came downstairs dressed for work. It was barely 6:30. You're up early, Maria said. Couldn't sleep. He poured himself coffee, his hands unsteady. Big presentation today. Maria watched him, really watched him. This man was drowning, going through motions, using work like a shield against everything he couldn't face. Mr. Taylor, she started carefully. About this weekend. I'll be working Saturday, he said quickly. Too quickly. There's a client issue that needs attention. Saturday. The birthday. Maria's chest tightened. On Saturday specifically. Yeah. Why? He didn't remember. Even after their conversation, even after she'd reminded him. He'd buried it so deep, his mind wouldn't let him see it. Nothing, Maria said quietly. Just wondering. Charles grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. Charles, Maria said. He stopped, turned. It was the first time she'd used his first name. Your daughters need you, she said softly. Not your money, not your solutions, just you. His face crumpled for just a second. Then he pulled it back together. I know, he whispered. I don't know how to be what they need. You don't have to know. You just have to show up. He nodded, but Maria saw the truth in his eyes. He didn't believe her. He left without another word. Maria stood at the window, watching him go, and made her final decision. She was doing this, with or without his permission. Later that morning, after the girls finished their breakfast, Maria sat down with them. I need to ask you something, she said, and I need you to be honest with me. 3 pairs of eyes looked up at her. Do you remember what this Saturday is? The girls went very still. Our birthday, Rachel whispered. Do you want to celebrate it? Silence. Then Phoebe spoke, her voice shaking. Mama always made our birthdays special. I know, sweetheart. But she's not here anymore. No, she's not. Maria took a breath. But what if we did something small? Just the 4 of us. To remember her. To celebrate you. Would you want that? The girls looked at each other, some silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Hope said, What about Daddy? What about him? Will he be sad? Maria's throat tightened. Maybe. But maybe he needs to remember too, that it's okay to celebrate, that your mama would want you to be happy. She would, Rachel said quietly. She always said birthdays were about being grateful we're alive. Then let's do that, Maria said. Let's be grateful. Together. Phoebe reached for Maria's hand. Will you help us? Baby, I already started. That afternoon, while the girls rested, Maria made a list. She needed ingredients for Catherine's cake, recipe. 3 dresses in blue, red, and green. Decorations, simple, nothing fancy. Time to bake with the girls. A miracle to pull this off without Charles knowing until it was too late to stop part. She had $200 in her checking account. Not much, but enough. The next morning, 2 days before the birthday, Maria told Charles she needed to take the girls shopping. For what? He asked, distracted by his phone. Just some things they need. He pulled out his credit card without looking up. Get whatever you need. Maria almost told him then, almost explained. But she saw the walls around him, the way he was holding himself together by not thinking about Saturday. If she told him now, he'd shut it down. Cancel everything. Retreat. Thank you, she said softly, taking the card. That afternoon, Maria and the girls drove to the small dress shop Catherine used to take them to. The owner, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, recognized them immediately. "Oh, my darlings," she said, tears in her eyes. "I've thought about you so much." "We need birthday dresses," Phoebe said quietly, "like Mama used to get us." Mrs. Chen pressed a hand to her heart. "Then let's find you the perfect ones." One by one, the girls tried on dresses. Blue for Phoebe, red for Hope, green for Rachel. When they looked at themselves in the mirror, something shifted in their faces. They looked like children again. "Mama would love these," Hope whispered. Maria knelt down beside them. "She's probably smiling right now." On the way home, Rachel said from the back seat, "Maria?" "Yes, baby." "Do you think Daddy will be mad?" Maria gripped the steering wheel. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I think he needs this as much as you do." That night, after everyone was asleep, Maria sat in the dark kitchen with Catherine's journal. One day left. Tomorrow she'd bake with the girls. Tomorrow she'd set everything up. Tomorrow Charles would leave for work, still running from the date he couldn't face. And Saturday, on their 8th birthday, she'd show him what his wife already knew. That love doesn't end. It just keeps showing up, even when you think you've forgotten how. Saturday morning, Maria woke up at dawn with her stomach in knots. This was it. She got dressed quietly, prayed in the darkness of her small room, and went to wake the girls. They were sleeping close together like always, their mattresses pushed into one big bed, 3 small bodies finding safety in each other. Maria sat on the edge and gently touched Phoebe's shoulder. "Girls, wake up!" They stirred slowly, blinking in the early light. "What time is it?" Hope mumbled. Maria smiled softly. "Time to celebrate." She pulled Catherine's journal from behind her back. All 3 girls sat up immediately. "That's," Rachel's voice caught, "that's Mama's." "It is," Maria said, "and she left something in here for you." She opened to the birthday page and watched their faces as they read their mother's handwriting. The plans, the recipes, the love poured into every word. Phoebe traced the letters with her finger. "She wrote this before she died." "She did." "She knew we'd need it," Hope whispered. "She knew," Maria said, her throat tight, "because love always knows." Rachel looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Do you know what today is?" Maria nodded. "It's February 15th. It's your 8th birthday." The words hung in the air. "We thought," Phoebe started, then stopped. "We thought maybe we weren't supposed to have birthdays anymore." Maria's heart broke. "Baby, why would you think that?" "Because Mama's not here, and Daddy never said anything. So we thought, maybe birthdays died with her." Maria pulled all 3 of them close. "Listen to me. Your Mama wrote in here that if she could give you one gift, it would be permission to be happy, even when you're sad, even when you miss her." "But how?" Rachel asked. "How do we be happy when it hurts this much?" "By choosing it," Maria said gently. "One moment at a time. And today, we're going to choose it together." An hour later, the kitchen was transformed. Maria had put on the Beatles' "Here Comes the Sun" and laid out everything they needed: mixing bowls, flour, eggs, sugar. Catherine's recipe written in her own hand. The girls stood at the counter in their new dresses, blue, red, green. They looked nervous, excited, terrified. "Mama always let us crack the eggs," Phoebe said quietly. "Then you crack the eggs," Maria said, handing her one. Phoebe's hands shook. The egg cracked, shell falling into the bowl along with the yolk. "I messed it up," she whispered. "No, you didn't. Your Mama's recipe says, let them make a mess, that's where the love gets in." Hope picked out the shell pieces carefully. "She really wrote that?" "She really did." They worked together, following Catherine's notes exactly. Rachel added extra vanilla, just like the recipe said she would. Hope snuck chocolate chips when she thought no one was looking. Phoebe stirred the batter with her whole body, the way children do when they're fully present. And slowly, beautifully, something shifted. They started laughing. Not forced, not pretend, real laughter. The kind that comes from deep inside when joy remembers it's allowed to exist. Flour dusted their dresses, batter splattered the counter. The kitchen looked like a disaster. It looked like life. "Mama would love this mess," Rachel said, smiling through tears. She would, Maria agreed, her own eyes wet. While the cake baked, they made frosting, simple vanilla buttercream. The girls took turns with the mixer, adding food coloring to make it perfect. "It smells like her," Hope said suddenly, breathing in the scent of vanilla and sugar. "Like when she used to bake." "That's because you're doing exactly what she did," Maria said. "You're keeping her love alive." When the cake was done and cooled, they decorated it together. Not perfectly, not like a bakery, but with 4 pairs of hands and 1 shared heart. Rachel wrote, "Happy birthday," in wobbly frosting letters. Phoebe added, "Sprinkles too many, just right." Hope placed the candles, and Maria stood back, watching these 3 girls who'd been silent for 8 months, finally remembering how to be children again. "Should we wait for Daddy?" Phoebe asked. Maria's stomach dropped. Charles had left at 6 that morning, told Maria he had to go into the office, would be gone all day. He was running, still running. "I don't know when he'll be home, sweetheart." "He forgot again, didn't he?" Rachel said quietly. Maria knelt down to their level. "Your daddy is hurting so much, he can't see straight. But that doesn't mean you can't celebrate. That doesn't mean your mama's love doesn't count." "What if he gets mad that we did this without him?" Hope asked, her voice small. "Then I'll take the blame," Maria said firmly. "This is on me, not you. Never you." They nodded, but Maria saw the worry in their eyes. She lit the candles. 8 small flames flickering in the afternoon light. "Ready?" she asked. The girls held hands, and together they started to sing. "Happy birthday to you." Their voices were shaky at first, then stronger, filling the kitchen with sound that hadn't existed in this house for so long. Maria joined in, harmony weaving through their melody. "Happy birthday, dear Phoebe, Hope, and Rachel." They were crying and smiling at the same time. "Happy birthday to you." The candles wavered. "Make a wish," Maria whispered. The girls closed their eyes, leaned in together, and blew. The flames went out. Smoke curled upward, and in that moment, something broke, not in a painful way. In the way a heart breaks open after being closed too long. In the way grief finally makes space for joy. In the way 3 little girls remembered they were still allowed to be alive. They clapped, laughed, hugged each other. Maria cut the cake, served them each a slice. They ate with their fingers, frosting on their faces, talking over each other about memories of their mother, about the cake, about how good it felt to smile again. The kitchen was full of music and mess and beautiful, broken, healing love. And Maria, watching them, thought, this is what resurrection looks like. But she didn't know, couldn't have known, that at that exact moment, Charles was getting into his car at the office. That guilt had finally crushed through his defenses. That he'd realized what day it was and was racing home, terrified of what he'd find. She didn't know he was 10 minutes away. Didn't know that when he opened the front door, he would hear sounds that shouldn't be possible. Didn't know that everything was about to change. The girls were still laughing when they heard it. A key in the lock. The front door opening. Footsteps. They all froze. "Is that?" Hope started. Maria's heart stopped. "Daddy," Rachel whispered, and from the hallway they heard his voice. Broken, stunned, barely audible. "What? What's happening?" Charles stood in the doorway of the dining room. He couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what he was seeing. His 3 daughters, dressed in bright colors he hadn't seen them wear in months, sat at the table. Their faces had frosting on them. Their eyes were bright, alive. And Maria stood behind them, holding a homemade birthday cake. The room smelled like vanilla and sugar and something he thought had died with Catherine. It smelled like home. "Daddy," Phoebe whispered. The word broke something in him. His briefcase hit the floor. His hand went to his mouth. And Charles Taylor, a man who'd built empires, who'd faced down boardrooms full of executives, who'd never let anyone see him, weak, fell to his knees. A sound came out of him that didn't even sound human, raw, guttural. The sound of 8 months of held grief finally breaking through. "I forgot," he choked out. "I forgot your birthday. I forgot." But before he could finish, 3 small bodies crashed into him. Phoebe, Hope, Rachel. their arms wrapped around his neck, his shoulders, his chest, holding him while he shattered. "It's okay, Daddy," Hope said, her small hand on his wet face. "We thought you forgot because you were sad," Rachel added. "But Maria remembered," Phoebe said. "She found Mama's journal. She helped us make Mama's cake." Charles looked up through his tears at Maria. She stood quietly by the table, giving them space. Her own eyes filled. "You," his voice broke. "You did this?" Maria nodded. "I hope that's okay." "Okay?" Charles pulled his daughters tighter. "You gave them back their childhood?" "No, sir," Maria said softly. "They never lost it. They just needed permission to find it again." Charles looked at his daughters. Really, looked at them. They were smiling, actually smiling. Their eyes weren't empty anymore. They weren't ghosts. They were his girls. "I'm so sorry," he whispered to them. "I've been so lost without your mama. I forgot you were lost too." "We were really lost, Daddy," Rachel said quietly. "But Maria helped us find our way back. She told us Mama would want us to be happy," Hope added. "Even when we're sad," Phoebe finished. Charles pressed his forehead against theirs. She would. God, she would. For a long moment, they just held each other, a father and his daughters, finally present, finally together. Then Rachel pulled back slightly. "Daddy, do you want some cake? We made it. Maria helped, but we did most of it." Charles laughed through his tears. "I would love some cake." They pulled him to his feet, leading him to the table. Maria had already cut him a slice, set it down at the head of the table where he always sat. He sat, looked at the cake, simple, imperfect, made with love. He took a bite. The taste hit him like a memory. "This is," his voice cracked, "this is Catherine's recipe. Maria found it in Mama's journal," Phoebe explained. "She wrote down everything, the recipe, the dresses, everything." Charles looked at Maria again. "You found her journal?" "In her study, sir. I hope that was all right. I didn't mean to intrude, but—" "Thank you," Charles said, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't." Maria nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. The five of them sat at that table, eating birthday cake on a Saturday afternoon. And for the first time in 8 months, the silence wasn't heavy. It was full, full of presence, full of memory, full of a love that refused to die just because someone was gone. Charles watched his daughters laugh and talk and be children again. And he realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. Catherine hadn't left them with nothing. She'd left them with each other. She'd left them with her words, her recipes, her traditions. She'd left them with love that didn't end. It just needed someone brave enough to unwrap it. Someone like Maria. A woman with worn shoes and no degrees who understood something Charles had forgotten. That healing doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from showing up, from being present, from loving people through their pain instead of trying to fix it. "Maria," Charles said quietly. She looked up. "Will you sit with us?" Maria hesitated. "Sir, Please," he said. "You're part of this too." Slowly, Maria pulled out a chair and sat down. And Charles cut her a slice of cake. The same cake his daughters had made with their small hands. The same cake his late wife had perfected years ago. The same cake that tasted like hope. Outside, the San Francisco sun was setting over the bay. Inside, a broken family was beginning to remember how to be whole, different than before. Forever changed, but together, and that was enough. For now, that was more than enough. After the cake, Charles didn't leave. He stayed at that table with his daughters, listening to them talk in a way he hadn't heard in 8 months. They told him about making the cake, about finding the journal, about how Maria had helped them remember it was okay to miss their mama and still be happy. And Charles listened, really listened. Not thinking about work, not planning his next move, not trying to fix anything. Just present. When the sun started setting, Hope climbed into his lap. Something she hadn't done since Catherine died. "Daddy, can we do Memory Fridays?" she asked. "What's that, sweetheart?" "Maria's idea," Rachel explained. "Every Friday we cook one of Mama's recipes and talk about her, so we don't forget." Charles's throat tightened. He looked at Maria. You did that? They needed a way to keep her close, Maria said softly. Memory shouldn't hurt. It should heal. Memory Fridays, Charles repeated, his voice thick. Your mama would have loved that. So, can we? Phoebe pressed. Can we keep doing it? Charles pulled all three of them close. Yes, and I'll be there. Every Friday, I promise. Even if you have work? Rachel asked carefully. Especially if I have work, Charles said, because you three are more important than any meeting, any deal, anything. The girls relaxed against him, and for the first time since Catherine's death, Charles felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Later that evening, after the girls went upstairs to play, Charles found Maria cleaning up the kitchen. Let me help, he said. Sir, you don't have to. I want to. They worked in silence for a few minutes, washing dishes, putting things away. Finally, Charles spoke. I need to tell you something. Maria looked up. I've been drowning, he said quietly. Since Catherine died, I've been going through the motions, showing up, but not really there. And I convinced myself I was protecting them. Protecting myself. But the truth is I was just running. Grief does that, Maria said gently. But you didn't run. You showed up. You loved my daughters when I was too broken to figure out how. Mr. Taylor. Charles, please, call me Charles. Maria nodded. Those girls in there, he continued, his voice shaking. They were fading, disappearing right in front of me, and I couldn't stop it. I hired experts. Threw money at the problem, but nothing worked. And then you walked through that door with your worn-out shoes and your grandmother's hymns, and somehow, you reached them. I just loved them, Maria said simply. That's what Catherine would have done. Charles wiped his eyes. That's exactly what she would have done. They stood in the quiet kitchen, the weight of the day settling between them. Can I ask you something? Charles said. Of course. Why did you do this? You could have lost your job. I could have come home and fired you on the spot for overstepping. Why risk it? Maria was quiet for a long moment. Because I know what it's like to be those girls, she finally said. I know what it feels like when everyone's trying to fix you, but nobody's just sitting with you. And I know what it's like when someone finally does. When someone shows up and says, it's okay to hurt, it's okay to miss her, and it's okay to keep living. Her voice cracked. Your daughters needed that, and if I lost my job giving it to them, then that was a risk worth taking. Charles stared at her. This woman who had everything to lose and nothing to gain. This woman who loved like it cost her nothing when it actually cost her everything. You're not just a maid, Maria, he said quietly. I know that's not what you hired me for, but... No, I mean your family now. Whether you planned it or not, you're part of this family. Maria's eyes filled. Upstairs, they could hear the girls laughing, actually laughing. The sound floated down like music. Charles looked toward the ceiling, listening. I almost lost them, he whispered. If you hadn't come, if you hadn't done what you did, I don't know if we would have made it back. But you did, Maria said. You're here now. That's what matters. Charles nodded, but something was settling in his chest. A realization. A knowing. This woman had given his family everything, and she'd asked for nothing in return. That night, after Maria went to her room, Charles sat in his study with Catherine's journal. He read every page, every recipe, every tradition, every word of love his wife had left behind. And he came to the unfinished letter, the one Catherine had started but never got to complete. His fingers traced her handwriting. Then he picked up a pen, and on a fresh page, Charles began to write. Not to his daughters, but to Maria, the woman who'd saved them all. He wrote until midnight, and when he finally closed the journal, he knew exactly what he had to do. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But this time, it wouldn't be grief that changed them. It would be gratitude. It would be grace. It would be the kind of love that says, you gave us everything, now let us give something back. 2 weeks after the birthday, Charles called Maria into his study. She came nervously, wondering if she'd finally crossed one line too many. Sit down, he said gently. Please. Maria sat. Charles looked tired but different somehow. Lighter, like a man who'd been holding his breath for months and finally remembered how to exhale. "I want to talk to you about your future," he began. Maria's stomach dropped. "If this is about the birthday, It's about what you did for my daughters, for me, for this family." He pulled out a folder from his desk. "I did some research. I hope that's not invasive, but I needed to understand who you are." Maria's hands twisted in her lap. "You're working 3 jobs to put yourself through community college, taking child development classes online at night, trying to build a better life for yourself." "I just want to help people," Maria said quietly. "Kids who are hurting. Kids like I was." Charles nodded. "That's exactly what I thought." He slid the folder across the desk. "Here's what I'm offering. I'll pay for your education, full tuition, wherever you want to go. Berkeley has an excellent program. Stanford too. You pick." Maria's eyes went wide. "Mr. Taylor, I can't." "Let me finish. When you graduate, and you will graduate, there's a permanent position here, not as a maid, as my daughter's educator and caregiver. Full salary, benefits, health care. Your own space in the guest house. You'd be part of this family officially." Maria couldn't speak. "You gave my daughters back their lives," Charles continued, his voice breaking. "You showed me what it means to be present. You honored my wife's memory when I was too broken to do it myself. This isn't charity, Maria. This is family taking care of family." Tears streamed down Maria's face. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you did it for us. Because Catherine would have wanted this. Because my daughters need you." He paused. "Because I need you too." Maria covered her face and cried. Years of struggle, of working 3 jobs, of believing she'd never be enough. And here was a man offering her not just opportunity, but home. Charles came around the desk and knelt beside her chair. "Welcome home, Maria," he said softly. She looked at him through her tears. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." That evening, Charles gathered the girls in the living room. "I need to tell you something," he said. They looked up at him, curious. "Maria's going to stay, not just as someone who works here. As family, she's going to live here and help take care of you while she goes to school." For a moment, the girls were silent. Then Hope whispered, "Forever?" "As long as she wants," Charles said. All 3 girls turned to Maria. "You're staying?" Rachel asked, her voice small and hopeful. Maria nodded, unable to speak. The girls launched themselves at her, hugging her, crying, laughing. "We love you," Phoebe said into Maria's shoulder. "I love you too," Maria whispered back. "So much." That night, the 5 of them had dinner together. Not as employer and employee, as family. Charles watched his daughters talk and laugh and be alive. He watched Maria fit into their broken pieces like she'd always belonged there. And he felt Catherine's presence. Not in a haunting way. In the way love never really leaves. It just changes form. Later, after the girls were asleep, Charles stood in Catherine's study. Her journal sat open on the desk. He picked up a pen and finished the letter she'd started. "To my girls, on your 8th birthday. If I could give you one gift, it would be this. Permission to keep living, to keep loving, to keep laughing even when your heart is broken. Grief and joy aren't opposites, my darlings. They're companions. They walk together. And the greatest way to honor someone you've lost is not to stop living, it's to live even more fully. I sent you someone. I know I did. Someone who understands pain and still chooses kindness. Someone who will show you that love doesn't end. It just keeps showing up. Be brave. Be kind. Be present. And remember, I'm always with you. All my love, Mama. And from your father, I'm so sorry it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. You 3 are my whole world. And from now on, I'll show up. Not perfectly, but present. That's all that matters. I love you more than words can say. Dad." Charles closed the journal and looked at Catherine's photo on the desk. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything. For them. For Maria. For teaching me that presence is more powerful than perfection." The house was quiet. But it wasn't the heavy silence of before. It was the peaceful kind. The kind that comes when broken things start healing. Outside, the lights of San Francisco glittered across the bay. Inside, A family that had been shattered was learning to be whole again. Different than before. Forever changed. But together. And sometimes, maybe most of the time, that's what grace looks like. Not fixing everything. Not erasing the pain. Just showing up. Just loving through the darkness. Just remembering that even in the deepest grief, God is working. Through unlikely people. Through gentle hearts. Through women with worn shoes and grandmothers' hymns who understand that healing doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from sitting in the sadness until it doesn't feel so big anymore. It comes from making birthday cakes with small hands. It comes from choosing, again and again, to keep living, to keep loving, to keep believing that even when everything falls apart, something beautiful can still grow. Charles turned off the light and walked upstairs. Past his daughter's room where 3 small bodies slept peacefully. Past Maria's room where a young woman dreamed of a future she never thought possible. To his own room where Catherine's side of the bed would always be empty. But tonight, for the first time in 8 months, that emptiness didn't crush him. Because he finally understood. Love doesn't end when someone dies. It just finds new ways to show up. New hearts to work through. New hands to hold. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough to let it in, it saves you.